All right, everyone. The other day, Trump aimed his fire upon big tech, talking about censorship and suppression of political views. When Trump or when Hawley and some of these others do this, I appreciate the sentiment because big tech quite clearly is engaged in what is even dubiously legal censorship of political opinions. That being said, though, Trump and these others, when they talk about it, they're like, well, they're all Democrats. It's, censorship of conservatives. Sitting here as a non-conservative who primarily follows non-conservative commentators, actually, people who are on the new right or libertarian, they're not conservatives in the sense Trump would probably position them. Speaking as someone on that side of YouTube, I would say that most of the people, or any of these platforms, most of the people I'm seeing censored are not conservatives at all. The political commentators, I mean. Like Sargon, he's not a conservative. You can call him one, you can say he's far right because of his supposed views on women. That's bullshit. Most of the nationalistic people, some of them I would consider socialists. They're literally national socialists, I guess. They went a little bit, they went out into left field economically, and they're talking about, oh, we want welfare for white people. Some stupid shit like that, basically. And it's like really funny. It's like, okay, you have your ethno-state and you immediately decide to destroy it with communism, but, it's okay because at least it's white. I don't know, sounds a little bit like Louis Farrakhan or something to me, but we'll see. But I appreciate it because big tech censorship is the biggest problem that we face as a society. Like, a lot of people, they think the biggest problem is, well, we might go to war with Iran, Orange Man bad, hashtag Me Too or something. No, the biggest problem as a society in the civic and political sense that we have is defending the free and open internet, because the internet has absorbed radio, it's absorbed TV, it's absorbed telephone stuff, to the point where it's just one mass of human communication. That is the internet. It is now the internet of everything, not just the internet of things. And so that is the main human communication structure for most of the world's population. It is being strangulated by a handful of corporate oligarchs who are being empowered, and in some cases leaned on, by various world governments. I see that as a form of totalitarianism. For governments to exact tyrannical power, like the European governments are, through private companies, especially when those private companies are based in the United States, is a greater threat to our way of life, a greater threat to the world economy, and a greater threat to world peace than any individual regime in the world today. It is it's far more dangerous than Iran developing a nuke. It's far more dangerous than North Korea. It's far more dangerous than US imperialism or Russian election interference. All of these things are small potatoes. The power of human communication being fielded in a malevolent way by a company like Google or Amazon is more devastating potentially than a nuclear weapon. The amount of damage that it could do economically or to people's way of life dwarfs nuclear weapons. You would have to have a worldwide nuclear exchange that leads to 99% of humanity dying, and the internet too, in order for it to be as destructive potentially as what could happen if a dozen people in a corporate boardroom decided, hey, we're just going to strangulate all human communication because we already have so much political power. We've already bought off so many regimes, so many politicians around the world, nobody's going to do anything about it. That's what I would say. So I appreciate the sentiment. The problem is, you can't solve a problem unless you fundamentally understand what the problem is. If a doctor goes in, you've got no diagnosis, you're just looking at the symptoms. You think that the patient has flu. You start them on antiviral drugs or whatever they do for the flu. You tell them get plenty of fluid and rest or something. But it turns out they've actually got Ebola. Well, the fluid and rest isn't going to do much. Neither are the anti-flu drugs you just gave. They're not going to do jack shit. You should be giving him some sort of serum or something like that, or whatever they do these days for Ebola. But it looks the same now, doesn't it? The problem is that Trump and Hawley and people like this are assuming that this is a fundamentally political sort of thing, but it's money related. The problem of the corruption of the internet that we see going on right now, slowly rotting it from within, is a money thing. Politics is secondary. Yeah, of course, a lot of these media sites that are getting displaced are left-wing, but that doesn't mean that they're doing this to increase left-wing politics. As we see from some of Google's employees and stuff, there is definitely a liberal bias in some of these companies, but it's primarily about the money. For the higher-ups, it's, hey, I want more money. But these ad firms are being whipped into a frenzy by the legacy media into thinking that there's a bunch of bigotry on my site. They're getting the soccer moms of America riled up. Instead of fighting back and pointing out that this isn't the case, they bent over backwards to accommodate these companies. Because, you know, you get CNN on your site and all these other groups. There's a new audience that filters in, you make more money. They got greedy. That's the whole problem. Human greed, not politics. Most politicians are greedy. Republicans, Democrats, Labor, Lib Dem, Conservatives, UKIP party, fucking Brexit party, whatever, it doesn't really matter. They're all fucking greedy. Putin's people, anti-Putin's people. They're all greedy. That's why you need constraints on government. And it's also why you need constraints on corporate power. And the tech firms, adjusted for inflation, like currency value, looking at their holdings and the power that they wield, they put the robber barons of the late 1800s to shame. The robber barons of the carpetbagging era with their monopolies and trusts have nothing compared to the wealth and prestige that you have in Silicon Valley today. This one little area of the world controls virtually all human communication that goes on, and there are people who don't think that's a problem. You see, increasingly, they're censoring people at the behest of billion-dollar corporations and multimedia firms with corporate offices in Shanghai or New York City, and people don't see that as a problem. And the people who do see it as a problem boil it down to a very simplified, rudimentary political issue, and they can't solve the problem because they don't understand what the problem is. So it's a big, the bigger problem is the fact that nobody seems to understand it within the rungs of government that could do anything about it. Crenshaw comes out and says, oh, suppression of conservatives. It's not just suppression of conservatives. Can you get somebody like me out to DC for a weekend to talk to you about this? Because right now, primarily, all you're doing is hearing from constituents that are equally ignorant of the problem, think it's political, and then you call in Zuckerberg, browbeat him for 10 minutes, and he leaves. Or you call in Jack Dorsey, he lies to you for a half an hour, and then he leaves. And you don't even hold them accountable. You get Google's lawyers in. You cross-examine them for a while. The Democrats softball them because they agree with them for political reasons. You hardball them because you feel you disagree with them for political reasons, and you're all being hoodwinked. These companies are fooling you. They're running circles around Congress because most people in Congress can barely turn on a computer. That's the real problem. That's about all. Peace out.